tragedy in Washington.
Crash. This is Alert 3.
We're learning more about how the crash happened, the flight recordings, and the victims, including the Charlotte-based flight crew. Plus, new concerns about the crowded airspace above Reagan National Airport and the staffing at air traffic control. Team coverage of the deadly mid-air crash in D.C. right now at 7. 67 people presumed dead tonight after the mid-air crash in Washington, D.C. This is just a handful of them. 5 people with ties to North Carolina. 4 were airline workers.
This now a live look over Washington, D.C. tonight. Right now, crews are still at this moment working to recover the remains of other passengers from the Potomac River. Thank you for joining us here at 7 o'clock. I'm Dan Haggerty.
And I'm Ashley Rowe. Among the other victims on that flight out of Wichita were members of a figure skating team on their way back from competition. We still don't know why the aircrafts collided. The investigation less than 24 hours old.
WRAL's Brian Schrader. It's been a very busy day for you, Brian. You've been keeping tabs on all of this from the Live Center, and more news continues to come in just the last 30 minutes.
That's right. Some new reporting in the last 30 minutes. We have learned that one of the 2 so-called black box recorders on that American Airlines flight has been recovered. As we take a live look right now at that scene on the Potomac River, that airplane had 2 different recorders. One is a flight data recorder that measures all of the different parameters of the instruments on the plane. That was one of the recorders. The other one records cockpit voice conversations. So we're not sure which of those 2 recorders has been recovered. Also, some new reporting in the past 30 minutes about previous close calls at Reagan National Airport. CNN says that over the past 3 years, on at least 2 occasions, passenger planes had to take evasive actions while landing at the airport to avoid collisions with helicopters. And the Washington Post is reporting that on Tuesday night, just 24 hours after last night's deadly collision, a different regional jet coming in for a landing had to make a second approach to avoid hitting a helicopter that appeared in its flight path.
All big developments, Brian. Thank you. We're going to touch on all of that throughout the newscast here. Now, of course, we know that the flight was coming from Wichita, but the flight crew, they were based out of Charlotte. And so far, we have identified 4 of them. WRAL's Carly Haynes joining us live now. Carly, you've been able to speak to family members, some of them tonight. I cannot imagine what they are feeling.
Just an unimaginable loss for them. We have made contact with a few of them as well as some friends. As you said, all 4 of these crew members were based in Charlotte. And I want to show you some photos that we were able to get of them on your screen right now. This is going to be the pilot and the first officer. On the left, pilot Jonathan Campos, Epic Flight Academy, where Campos got his certification, said he was a skilled and dedicated pilot with an undeniable passion for flying. Next to him, Sam Lilly, first officer. His father wrote on Facebook that he had been with the airline for over 2 years and was getting married in the fall. We also know the names of the 2 flight attendants aboard that plane. This is Ian Epstein and Denasia Elder. Friends say Ian radiated positivity. His family posted that his loved ones are on the way to D.C. today. And friends say Denasia leaves behind young children and a husband. We're also learning more about a passenger who's from Charlotte. This is a GoFundMe for Wendy Schaefer, who you see here. She was a mom of 2, and in that GoFundMe, friends say she leaves a void that can never be filled. So these victims, this is very close to home in more ways than one.
You know, the folks down at Charlotte Douglas Airport, I'm sure they're responding to this. What are we hearing from them now?
They have released a statement. They are acknowledging this. They said that they are heartbroken and they're grieving alongside of people, and they're thinking of all the families and colleagues in this situation.
All right, Carly Haynes reporting live for us tonight. Thank you, Carly.
Hundreds of first responders have poured into the D.C. area to help with the recovery mission. Aaron Thomas is live outside of Lake Raleigh. Aaron, some disaster recovery teams are tasked with the toughest part, the grimmest part, recovering missing bodies.
That's exactly right, Ashley. And before we get into all of that, I want you to take into account the conditions that we're standing in and what those first responders are having to deal with. It's dark outside, the temperatures are starting to drop, and then you have large bodies of water like this river here. They even go into to lakes to find, or this lake rather, but they explore lakes and rivers to find these deceased victims, and they do so by trying to use human remains detections dogs, also known as cadaver dogs. We had the chance to speak with Deputy Jack Thorpe. He is with Nash County's cadaver dog team. We actually spoke with him not too long ago when he took part in some of the recovery efforts back in western North Carolina from the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. He says at this point his crews are still waiting on the sidelines to be called in for assistance with recovery efforts at the Potomac River. And Deputy Thorpe points out what these canines are searching for.
They are searching for odor. Cadaver odor. Unfortunately, a deceased victim, when they drown or they're underwater, the first part of decomposition, they will emit pockets of air, and those bubbles come up to the surface, and the dog can smell that.
So as you just heard him describe, there's certainly a grim experience for anyone to have to take part in. But in addition to those cadaver dogs, he also says sonar technology is helpful in experiences like this one.
Aaron, I'm curious. You've been speaking with Deputy Thorpe. Where does he think that most of these bodies will be located?
Yeah, I have to be honest with you. When he gave this response, I cringed a little bit just because just how intense these first responders, what they're looking for at this point. So when you factor in the impact of that helicopter with the plane, there's several things that they're looking for and where these bodies could be located. They could be in one specific spot of the Potomac River. We know that's also a large body of water, so it could be spread out across that river. Then you also have to factor in some of these passengers were likely strapped in their seatbelts, so there's a good chance many of them were still in part of the remains of that aircraft.
All right, Aaron, thank you.
So a lot has been made today of President Donald Trump's response to this tragedy in Washington, D.C. Not the part where he called for a moment of silence, not when he shared his grief for the victims and their families. No, it was particularly about a part of him talking about policy. We're going to play a little bit of that for you here. Now, typically, you know, the news, we play short sound bites sometimes. And whenever that happens with President Trump, people always accuse the news of maybe taking things out of context or something. So we are going to play the longer clip so you can listen to it to give you a better sense of what he was talking about today.
The FAA's website states they include hearing, vision, missing extremities, partial paralysis, complete paralysis, epilepsy, severe intellectual disability, psychiatric disability, and dwarfism all qualify for the position of a controller of airplanes pouring into our country, pouring into a little spot, a little dot on the map, a little runway. The initiative is part of the FAA's diversity and inclusion hiring plan. Think of that. The initiative is part of the FAA's diversity and inclusion hiring plan, which says diversity is integral to achieving FAA's mission of ensuring safe and efficient travel. I don't think so. I think it's just the opposite.
So he also mentioned an executive order that he signed last week called Keeping Americans Safe in Aviation. It ordered the FAA to return to merit-based hiring. A bit ironic, though, because it was back in 2019 that Trump's administration established a diversity program at the FAA. It was a, quote, pilot program to help prepare people with disabilities for careers in air traffic operations. That initiative targeted people, and this is going to sound a bit familiar to what he was just saying, with hearing and vision impairment, missing extremities, partial or complete paralysis, epilepsy, psychiatric disability, and dwarfism. In fact, if you look at the percentage of FAA workers with a disability, the number was 7.5% in 2015 under President Obama. It nearly doubled to 14% under Trump in his first administration, rose another 3% under Biden. It makes sense, too, that the FAA would cast a wider net in their recruitment process. They have a lot of trouble filling these air traffic control jobs. At one point last year, they were down 3,000 controllers. That's a lot. The FAA even admitted at the time of last night's crash, one person in the tower was overseeing airplanes and helicopters. All day, the news has been reporting how that's not, quote, normal, but it turns out that it is. In the last hour, investigators clarified that while it's usually a two-person job, it's not abnormal for just one person to do it. It happens all the time. That was a detail and narrative that changed in just the last hour or so. and a perfect example of why patience will tell us more about what happened here than anything else.
Up next, we are speaking with a U.S. Air Force Reserve colonel from Apex. He has extensive training in accident investigations. And get this, 2 of his squadron members are responding to the crash in D.C. His thoughts on the scope and scale of the response and what could have gone wrong between the aircrafts and air traffic control. Mike?
Actually, a little light rain is falling in the area. Just a moment ago, there was some light rain coming down on our garden cam. When we come back, I'll show you the live dual Doppler 5000 radar and when you'll need that umbrella. It's coming up.
For hours, crews have been searching the Potomac for debris from the crash and for the remains of the victims. The investigation, of course, just beginning. Crews did locate one of the flight data recorders. They still need to find the other one. Now, joining us now is someone with extensive training in accident investigations, Dr. Josh McConkey, an Air Force Reserve colonel and physician. First of all, Josh, thank you for being here.
No, thank you very much.
So we wanted to focus on some of your colleagues, 2 of your crew members who are actually there, hands-on, doing some of the very difficult work of even retrieving some of the bodies from the Potomac. Can you give us an idea of maybe some discussions you've had with them and describe some of the work that they're doing right now?
Now, as the recovery efforts have now, it's gone from rescue to recovery, and with that is kind of the more morbid task of trying to identify bodies, rescue bodies. I've talked with my members on the ground that have boots on the ground, and they've pulled several people from the Potomac, and they're obviously quite stressed right now. They're doing 24-hour operations, so they're rotating in 12-hour schedules, and it'll maintain through the night because they unfortunately haven't found all the bodies.
So the water's like 35 degrees.
Oh, yeah.
It's freezing.
So cold.
Very, very cold, damp environment, and then just the emotional stress, as you can imagine.
You have flown training missions in this exact area that we are talking about, and we heard Brian Schrader earlier in the broadcast talk about how there have been many near misses, and this has been an issue that has been ongoing with the helicopters and planes landing at Reagan. Give us your experience of this.
So having flown several missions around Washington, D.C., sightseeing, I've flown mainly day missions, but the thing that you're concerned the most on these is fast-moving aircraft. We call them the fast movers. So if you put it in very simple terms, the helicopter is slow, it's smaller. When you have these jet aircraft, it's akin to driving a Porsche or a Ferrari coming up on a scooter. It's lower, it's slower. You can't react very quickly, so it's just critical you have that communication from the air traffic control, because if you wait until they see that there's going to be an accident or they're close enough, you're already too late. The jet aircraft is right on top of the aircraft, and unfortunately you have these types of events. So that was always my greatest fear when I was flying.
Give me an idea of what it's like to fly around that airport, because we keep hearing the description of how busy it is. It's dark, different types of aircraft sharing that space. Have there been moments where it's been anxiety for you flying around in this area?
You know, they've had near misses in the past, which the investigations are starting to pull some of that up. They've had, the New York Times has reported kind of nationwide the increase in traffic congestion, which leads to these near misses. And you can see right here with the aircraft, the jet aircraft is on an approach. It was about 2,400 feet where the accident had 2,400.
So it's coming to runway 33,
it's coming
right?
33 right here. So we got north right here. It's just north to northwest. And the helicopter was coming across down to the south and was cutting across to the west. The reports that I've seen, the helicopter was supposed to maintain 200 feet. And the accident happened at 400 feet. So that tells me one of two things. Either in the helicopter, the crew was so concerned about other aircraft that they were focused outside, and it slowly drifted upwards into that 400-foot range. That 200 feet makes all the difference in the world when the skies have highways, and it's three-dimensional. So if you are above the altitude by a couple hundred feet or 1,000 feet, you might as well be flying on the wrong side of the road.
And how much time are we talking about going from 200 to 400? How long does that take in a helicopter?
It can happen in a few seconds, 15, 20, 30 seconds. It's usually a slow drift. If it happens quickly, they can generally recognize that. But if they're so focused outside looking those scanner duties, that was my job on the back of the aircraft as a flight surgeon, just constantly looking for other aircraft because those fast movers come so quickly. if they were just diverted in just a moment's 30 seconds and they drifted upward, that was a fatal accident.
It makes you wonder about, okay, well, what kind of communication, right? It goes back to air traffic control.
And how busy is that communication when you're in one of those helicopters? What are you listening to?
Air chatter from all the aircraft around you, air traffic control. And when you do find out that there was one traffic controller doing both aircraft, airplanes and helicopters, not that it can't be done, but just imagine multitasking something. It gets very stressful, and if you make a mistake, you have deadly consequences. And in this instance, there was either some type of communication error, or the helicopter didn't know that they were above 200 feet, but you lost 67 lives.
Yeah, exactly. But let's talk about the technology inside the helicopter. And you had mentioned that the folks inside of the helicopter would have been wearing night vision goggles. How complex and complicated is just understanding your surroundings and awareness in those moments when you're flying at night?
Everything is different at night. So the visibility is not as good, the depth perception is not as good, and they train hundreds of hours with these night vision goggles, so they're used to looking outside for tracking, and generally you'll have each eye focused, one in the cockpit, one outside the cockpit. So it's basically monocular vision as well, so that's how it affects the depth perception. Now, when you get fixated on the outside, it's very easy to lose track of things, and that slow drift may have led to that. The communications issues. So there's three, just with the multiple aircraft, the jet aircraft and the helicopters, that is a risk. Then you throw in the risk of the just all the air traffic and the congestion on top of night. Yeah. So there you have three high risk factors there. You put that all together, and that's how you get these type of accidents.
Ending in tragedy. Josh, thank you so much. We always appreciate you coming in and lending your perspective.
Thank you. Mike, we'll get it over to you.
We've been watching the live dual Doppler 5000 radar through the afternoon, showing the rain off to the west. It's now cruising through the triangle up toward Wake Forest, Purnell over to Rollsville, getting over to Zebulon. We're seeing a little bit of light rain and sprinkles, and more of that up towards southern Virginia. As we zoom on in, you can see Person County, Granville County, Vance County, up toward Henderson, Warren County, South Hill. You folks up at Chase City and Boynton seeing some light rain. And as we go through the evening, there may be these little bands that move through and affect mainly the northern counties and up in southern Virginia. We see that on Futurecast, showing at 7 o'clock some of that rain rolling on by, 8 o'clock as well. That moves out. There's more bands coming in off to the west. In fact, 2, 3, 4 a.m. we're seeing some of that light rain that may even stretch farther south into the triangle. Elizabeth will be here starting at 4:30, watching those little areas of light rain, and will likely be more stationed up in southern Virginia. We'll see more rain come in tomorrow night. I'll show you that on Futurecast coming up. City at Raleigh Museum Cam, looking at Fayetteville Street. There's the state capitol. Warm day today. Not as warm as yesterday, but still above normal. Our normal high is 53. 59 right now at RDU, and across the area it's a mild evening. 54 at Rocky Mount and Goldsboro, 52 right now in Southern Pines, and hour by hour we'll be in the 50s throughout the evening, and by daybreak we expect about 49, with most of the rain coming early this evening. Southern Virginia, you can expect it on and off throughout the night. 6 a.m. tomorrow, Futurecast showing quite a bit of cloud cover, but now that the models have slowed things down, not bringing the rain until tomorrow evening, we have all day to go without rainfall, and if some sun comes out, we could see the temperatures jump up into the mid to upper 70s, and also winds could gust 30, maybe 35 miles per hour. Now, the band of rain that's coming in now looks to be a little bit more hardy. We can end up seeing a little bit more rainfall. There could be an isolated storm. 8 o'clock tomorrow evening, the new timing shows the rain entering our western counties, sticking through the area at 10, 11, 12, 1 a.m. By 1 a.m., most of the rain is over the eastern counties and continues to head off toward the east. And I think as we wake up Saturday morning, we should see sunshine. And with the Krispy Kreme Challenge taking place Saturday morning, the weather's looking dry and it won't be all that cold, maybe upper 40s to low 50s. Now, rainfall potential has increased in the latest model run. 6 to 7/10 of an inch could be quite common. So if you're heading out to dinner tomorrow night, make sure you have the rain gear. The roads will likely be wet, so just take it easy. So early rain to the north through the evening. Overnight, it may just stick through southern Virginia. Lows will be in the mid to upper 40s. And then tomorrow, if it's dry all day long and we get a little bit of sunshine, mid to upper 70s, easily attainable, and gusty winds as well. 90% chance of rain tomorrow night, maybe an isolated storm. We've got a dry weekend coming up, cooler by Sunday, 58. But look how the temperatures rebound. Low to mid 70s Monday and Tuesday, maybe a slight dip Wednesday, and then mid 70s again next Thursday. No winter to be found except maybe Sunday morning.
All right, we'll take it. Thank you, Mike. The last commercial airline crash in the U.S. was 16 years ago. After the break, we're going to share one last thing, a message From the families of those victims in 2009 to the families of the victims today. One last thing tonight we want to mention. Last night's crash was the first commercial plane crash in the U.S. in about 16 years.
Yeah, the last one was in February 2009. 49 people died when Colgan Air Flight 3407 crashed near Buffalo. The NTSB investigation into that crash found the captain and first responder did not properly respond to a stall warning. Today, the families of the victims in that crash put out a statement about this crash.
In a message to the families who now share similar terrible connections to all of this, they wrote, "Our hearts break for the families who are now experiencing the same unimaginable grief and loss that we have suffered. No words can ease the pain of such a sudden and heartbreaking tragedy."
As we have learned firsthand, it is crucial to allow the NTSB to conduct a thorough investigation to determine the cause of this tragedy. We hope their work will provide answers and help prevent future accidents. Thank you for making WRAL your choice for local news.
Our next newscast is tonight at 10 o'clock on Fox 50 and at 11 on WRAL. Have a great night.